Today we're going to look at the proper way to rack a slide on a semi-automatic handgun. There's essentially two ways people tend to do this. One of them is not so correct, the other one makes a lot more sense. Why is it important to rack the slide properly? Well, first off, if you rack the slide improperly, you're going to cause a failure to feed. I see this a lot at the gun range. Folks will put a magazine in and they'll rack it, and what they'll do is they'll ride the slide. And when they ride the slide, that means that they pull it and they hold it and then they go forward with the slide. This typically retards the power of the recoil spring to run that slide forward and put that round into battery. We're going to start off today with my Glock 19. First off, I've got a blue gun mag. It's an empty mag. It's just a training magazine. I'm going to do a safety check. Breech is clear, no source of ammunition. Okay, so for starters, if I insert a magazine into the gun and I ride the slide, that is, I pull the slide back and hold it, and then I slowly run it forward, what tends to happen, I'll simulate this, is that you'll end up with an out of battery condition. That is where the slide has not gone fully forward. Now this Glock 19 is older, the recoil spring is quite well worn, and you can see that if I do this slowly, there's a little spot there where it actually catches. Okay? Obviously, the newer the gun, the stronger the recoil spring, there's less chance of that happening. Also, if the gun is properly lubricated, less chance of you having a failure to feed or the gun ends up in an out of battery position like that. But primarily, this is caused because people pull the slide, hold it, and then ease it forward. Or even if they pull it and go forward with their hands still on the slide. It's very, very important. When you rack this thing, you rack it like a slingshot. It's a gun, it shoots a lot of bullets, it's not going to get hurt. Wrap your fingers around this sucker, rack it nice and sharp. You want to pull with the left hand and punch out with the right hand, for us right-handed folks. I'm going to grab it on the back. Now I know a lot of the newer guns, even the newer Glocks, have some serrations like this on the front of the barrel. I do not recommend people rack it there for the reason that I have seen people rack guns and pull the trigger at the same time and the gun goes off. If your hand is anywhere near the barrel, that is just not a smart idea. I'm an old school guy. I believe if you're going to rack it, grab it up by the firing end, the business end. Grab it in the back. So, when I insert a magazine, and I'll turn this way for you guys to see. When I insert a magazine into my Glock, I'm going to insert it and I'm going to give it a push. My fingers are pointed up, and I'm going to rotate the gun. I'll change my angle so you can see. I'm going to rotate the gun in such a way that it comes right into the hand, and then I can pull with the left hand and push forward with the right hand in a very abrupt motion. And again, if you're a left-handed shooter, you just reverse the motions. Once again, I insert the magazine, push it into place, I rotate the gun, it's right there. I don't have to do anything funny with my arms or contort my body. What I tend to see people doing quite a bit at the gun range that aren't sure what they're doing is they insert a magazine and then they want to grab the gun in this fashion. They want to rack it like this. Okay? Maybe they're used to shooting a slingshot, or maybe they've seen this in the movies or something. Typically what happens when people try to rack the gun like this is they start to point the gun in funny directions. At an indoor gun range in particular, where the direction is quite important, and is one of the safety rules that is heavily enforced, that's a no-go. Lots of times people will rack it, and when they grab it like this, it's more comfortable for their body to point it down or point it up. It's a lot easier if you insert the magazine and you do this grip. And I'm going to turn so the camera can see that. I insert the magazine, and I'm going to grab it like that. Palm of my hand on this side of the gun, tips of my fingers on the other side, and the sight, I never mess my hand up on the side, I never scratch my hand with the sight because there's a little bit of a tunnel there. I'm going to punch out with the right hand, pull with the left hand. And I'm going to do this very abruptly. I should pull this thing back so abruptly that when the slide reaches the end of where it's going to go, my hand slips off and the slide slips forward. I want the entire strength of that recoil spring to project it forward. Okay? Special note on Glocks, like a lot of folks, I'm a trained Glock armorer. Glock calls this a slide stop lever. They do not call it a slide release lever. They do not recommend that you drop the slide by hitting this button. Okay? Now there's some other guns. For example, let's take a 1911. It's got some really hard steel pieces on it and a much longer slide lock or slide release lever. And you can sit here, drop it like that. You can do it all day long. I've seen Glocks that people have done this to repeatedly and over a period of time. This rather not very hardy, not very strong piece of metal, it will break down and eventually your slide won't stay locked back. For that reason, Glock always recommends that when you rack it by the slide. And you'll notice, I don't know if it'll show on the video, when I pull back, the slide stop lever falls down and then I let it go. If I'm going to rack it for real, I just want to do that very, very abruptly. There's a spring on the slide lock lever, pressing it down at all times. The only thing that causes that spring to come up is an actual live magazine. The follower on this Glock magazine has a little bit of a lip on it. I'll turn this way for you to see. When I push that in, can't really see it on the video, but it applies pressure upward. So the slide lock lever is always pressing up, and as long as the gun continues to cycle normally, provided there's no bullet, provided that it's loaded, it'll continue to cycle normally. That follower will never push the slide lock lever up. Okay. Anyway, that being the case, this slide will continue to function properly until the follower on the magazine pushes the slide lock lever up, and then it'll stay locked back. When you get that, if you insert a loaded magazine, and of course this one's not loaded, insert a loaded magazine, when you pull back on the slide, rather abruptly, or even if you do it slowly, that slide stop lever is going to fall down. Okay. So going back to the topic of racking it properly, number one, when we first start shooting, we want to rack it properly, because that keeps us from having a failure to feed, and then we can commence shooting. But why is it important to rack in this fashion as opposed to this? First off, I can keep the gun in a proper direction. An indoor gun range, or an outdoor range, is downrange, towards the target area. But if I'm in a self-defense or combat situation, I'm trying to defend myself, I want the gun always pointed in the direction of my opponent. If I'm loading, if I'm doing anything, I always want it pointed there, so that if I have to pull the trigger, even from this position, even if I'm not stretched out and pointed at the opponent, if I'm here, I can pull the trigger at any time. If I point the gun any which way or any other direction while I'm racking it, it's not on target, and it's going to make it more difficult for me to then get back on target and quickly take care of this person or whoever they are, rather than if I had it on target all the time. I can rack in that direction, I can shoot in that direction, I can use less lethal means if I need to. Okay. So number one, I always want the gun pointed towards the target area, or in a real situation towards the opponent. Number two, malfunctions. Most malfunctions, I'm going to take a Glock mag and some snap caps. No live ammo in the room. Put some snap caps in here so we can demonstrate. When you have a malfunction, you can have a failure to feed, a failure to extract. You can have a stovepipe, is basically a failure to totally extract. Or you can have the worst, a type 3 is a double feed. And a double feed occurs when there's a round that did not properly extract, and you've got a magazine in there with a round trying to load directly behind it. For most of the other malfunctions, type 1 and type 2 malfunctions, tap, rack, okay? I just loaded one in the chamber. It is a snap cap training round. If I have a malfunction, I can always tap, rack, out comes the bad round, it loads another good round. And that works just fine. I run into a problem, however, one that doesn't fly out of my hand. I run into a problem, however, when I have a double feed. A double feed is there is a round still in the chamber, it failed to extract, and now the gun is attempting to load another round right behind it. So first off, there's pressure. The slide is pushing forward on this. I've seen a lot of folks who attempt to clear this by trying to yank the mag out without locking the slide back. It's just a lot easier if you lock the slide back. So the first thing I'm going to do to clear this double feed is I'm going to press up on the slide lock and rip it, locking the slide back. Second thing I need to do is I need to pull the magazine out, okay? Hopefully the other round falls out. If it doesn't, I'm going to need to rack this thing, okay? If I have the magazine in these two fingers, and I'm used to racking the gun by these two fingers, I'm going to run into a little bit of a problem, one that I don't want to figure out when somebody's shooting at me. So if I do it properly though with these two fingers, I can rack it, and I can get right back on target rather quickly. So as long as I get used to racking in this way, when I have to properly clear a double feed, I'm not going to run into an issue. Again, if I'm used to racking with these two fingers, and I go to clear a double feed and I pull this thing out, there's really no other way I'm going to be able to pull it out, then I run into a little bit of a problem. Am I supposed to stick this thing under my chin and my mouth, stick it in my pocket? It's going to take more time, and if I have a situation where somebody is shooting at me, time seems to be pretty important. So I'm going to eject the magazine, rack it, and reinsert it. Okay? So that is the primary reason why when we want to rack with the palm and finger method like this. I just use the blue gun magazine. That's the primary reason we want to rack like this and not rack in this fashion. The other reason that we don't want to rack in this fashion is because it's actually not comfortable. It's a contortion of the body. It's not as easy to rack this way unless, like I said, you're going to point it in some unusual direction, and that's not going to go over well at a gun range. So that is pretty much it on how to properly rack a gun. Remember, there are two ways to rack it, this way and this way. This way is not good. This way is consistent. And if you do end up with a malfunction like a double feed, you can still clear that double feed and get back on target as quickly as possible. Thank you so much for watching my video, and we'll see you next time.